everyone. It's day 13 of the 21-day yoga challenge. Today, the focus of our practice is the very exciting inversions. We're going to be starting off with inversions for beginners. So each one of you can try this because it has immense benefits for the entire body and particularly for the nervous system. The glands in our brain are responsible for the growth and health of our overall body. And the yogic inversions stimulates the blood supply to this region, that is your brain. It's great for those with mental illnesses or disorders such as loss of memory, depression, restlessness, etc. Along with this, it also helps us build resistance in our lungs so that we can acclimatize to any weather. Inversions even help us increase the hemoglobin in our blood, which is an important parameter for our well being. And not only this, it helps us strengthen our spine, the abdominal muscular system, as well as the legs get toned. So, without much ado, let's get started with today's practice. Come on your fours to begin with. So, the knees come below the hips and the wrists come below the shoulders. And now pressing the hands and tucking the toes in, let's raise the hips up towards the ceiling, coming into Adho Mukha Swasan. The Adho Mukha Swasan is one of the most basic inversions and a very important asana in yoga. Let's stay here for a couple of minutes. You can keep your knees bent as we start with the practice. And slowly extending the knees out, straightening the legs. You can be on your toes, or if you're flexible, you can also go down on the heels. And now getting comfortable in this posture, pressing the hands into the mat, straightening the back as much as possible. Lift the pelvis up towards the ceiling as you walk your legs slightly, flexing and extending the knees with slight movement. By now, you must feel the blood flowing to your head region, which is the aim of today's practice. And now for a few variations. Moving the left hand slightly to the center, the right hand goes back to clasp the right ankle. Now, since the left hand has to bear the weight of the entire body, it needs to move slightly to the center. Now, moving the right hand slightly to the center, the left hand goes back to clasp the ankle again. Again, straighten your back by pushing your arms. And we're going to try doing this opposite hand to opposite leg. Hand goes back in order to hold the left ankle this time. The entire weight on the left hand. And similarly, take the left hand to grab hold of the right ankle. This is quite an exercise for the arms. So in inversions, the arms and the shoulders really get strengthened. It's one of the side benefits of inversions. Now gently coming out of the Adho Mukha Swasan, come back on your fours and come to resting in Vajrasana for a little bit. Now moving on, we're going to use the wall. So sit about half a foot away from the wall and then come on your fours again before we push our hands into the mat and get the knees off the ground, raising the hips. Now notice how my heels are rested on the wall. You can even increase the angle by raising your heels higher up on the wall, coming on the mounds of your foot and your toes. This is particularly useful for those who cannot hold this posture for a long time. Or if you cannot do any of the previous variations that I showed, then at least hold and stay in this posture for a good 5 minutes, providing you the same benefits by using the wall as a prop. Now coming back down on your fours and moving slightly away from the wall, maybe a few inches.
finding your rhythm and coming up again in Adho Mukha Swasan for a few more variations using the legs this time. So lift your right leg up, bending the knee, extending it upwards, and your toes trying to reach for the wall. Once you locate the wall, then press the toes and the mounds of your feet into the wall. Press down using your shoulders. Now make sure you do not turn your pelvis up towards the ceiling like I just showed. Instead, your hips need to be aligned, and holding this variation, opening up the hips and strengthening the shoulders, the shoulder blades, before you come down by bending the right knee again and releasing your feet onto the mat. Now we do this on the left leg, bending the left leg, reaching up, locating the wall and pressing your toes and mounds into the wall. Press down using your hands to activate your shoulders. Your belly moves towards thighs. And holding this posture, making sure that your hips are aligned, noticing and being aware of the left side of the pelvis, especially the lifted leg, is not rotated up towards the ceiling. Now releasing, bending the left knee and bringing it down. Coming back to your basic Adho Mukha Swasan and walking the legs and the hands slightly further away from the wall for an easier variation. So those of you who can't take the legs up that high, then you can just lift the legs up slightly above the waist level and press into the wall. We do the same with the left leg, and notice that this is a much lesser angle and an easier one. Bending your knees and coming down on your fours again, taking the hips back on the heels to sit in Vajrasana for a couple of seconds. Let's take a breather. Inhale and exhale. Let's come back to that Adho Mukha Swasan again for one last variation. I'm just walking my hands and feet slightly away from the wall, creating space for this variation, which is going to require me to lift my right leg up straight towards the ceiling instead of bending the knee. Once I reach up, I bend my knee to bring the heel as close to the hip as possible. Now aim to drop the right foot towards the left side by twisting and rotating your trunk and your pelvis such that the right abdomen and chest is facing up to the ceiling. And rotating back to the center, extend the right leg up straight and bring it back down on the mat. Let's get doing this on the left side. Lifting the left leg up straight towards the ceiling, bending the knee and dropping the heel towards the hip. Now drop the left heel towards the right side, opening up your pelvis and chest on the left up towards the ceiling. Hold it here for a breath before you rotate the trunk again to the center. Straighten the leg and drop it back down. We now get into the dolphin posture by placing our elbows down on the mat and still holding the posture of the Adho Mukha Swasan. So your head can either be rested on the mat or it can be looking at the space between the elbows. This one really working on opening up those shoulder blades as well as strengthening the arms. And now walking your hands back towards your feet for Uttanasana. Just clasp both your elbows and hang the head and the upper body down, leaving your upper body completely surrendering to the gravity. Hanging loose, letting go of any stress and tension in the body. The back of the legs getting a good stretch in this posture. You can also turn around to place your shoulder blades or the upper back against the wall for an extended or deep stretch. So rest the upper back as well as the forearms against the wall. You can walk slightly forward to press against the wall and to deepen the forward fold. Now, in order to come back up, you need to turn around away from the wall and gently coming up, straightening the torso. Stay here for a couple of seconds in case you're feeling slightly dizzy from the inversion or the blood rush. Now coming to the center of the mat, spreading your legs about 4 feet wide for Prasarita Padottanasana. So make sure that your toes are angled slightly inward and the heels are outward. Placing your hands on the sides of your hips, bend forward, keeping a straight back. Once your trunk is horizontal to the ground, release the hands from the hips and place it on the mat. You should feel a good stretch in your thighs, legs as well as the calf. And before we drop the head to get into the inversion, make sure that your hands aren't placed way too forward. They should try to be in line with the legs, but it's okay if it's slightly further. Now dropping the head down, keeping the back straight. This is one of the key points to keep in mind as you bend forward, placing the head on the mat, and if possible, try to take your hands back such that they are in line with the legs. Now dropping your head again and trying to align the feet, the hands and the head in one line just below the hip. Holding it here to enjoy the benefits of the inversion. Or if this is too difficult for you, then again, we use a brick to our rescue. So to place the brick a few inches away from the legs in front of you, place the hands and rest your head on the brick. Now if that's too much of a height, then you can also place the brick sideways. Try this out. Or even drop the brick horizontally and place your head on the brick. This can be very relaxing. Now try to take your hands aligned with your feet. Take the brick back in the same line and rest the head or the crown on the brick. Now this is making my back curve, so I had to bring my legs closer and rock the head down. Enjoy the feeling of the blood reverse in the spine. Bring a good supply of blood to the head. Now straightening the arms and making the trunk parallel to the mat. Come up as you inhale to bring your hands on the waist, straightening the torso. Bring your feet together. Now moving on to the more exciting bit of practicing the basics of Shirshasana. So coming on to our fours again and placing the elbows down on the mat such that the space between the elbows and the palms makes an equilateral triangle. So if I were to show this from the front, then the elbows need to be placed right below the shoulders, and you can try it by holding the elbows. It shouldn't be too narrow or for that matter too wide, because this could ruin the balance of the body. And now we need to place the crown of our head on the floor. One way to locate the crown is to place your thumbs on the earlobes, extend the fingers on top of the head, and wherever the fingers meet is the crown of your head. Once you've marked this, let's get back to coming down on our elbows. And now place the crown of your head on the mat, but not into the cup of your hands. So it's just about a few millimeters in front of your interlocked fingers. Now lifting the knees up, the hips up, and walking slowly towards your head. You can keep the knees bent and breathing in this posture for a couple of seconds. Try to get your body used to the weight on the head. So as a beginner, you may tend to feel a lot of weight on the head as you walk your legs towards your hands. Now try to come on the tip of your toes, completely shifting the weight on your head as well as your forearms. Your back and the spine are straight, the hips are lifted up, and the trunk is perpendicular to the mat. Now stay here on your toes for a couple of breaths, getting the body used to this position. And this is almost how you will be feeling in a headstand. Now holding this strong stance, try to take your right leg off the ground, the knees coming into the abdomen. Place it down. Now take the left leg towards the abdomen, the feet coming up. You can repeat this a couple of times just to get a sense of how it feels to have both your legs up finally in Shirshasana or the headstand. Now bringing the left leg down, the heels on the mat, and bending the knees, coming down on your fours. Now let's try this using the wall as a prop. So come to sitting in Vajrasana with your back against the wall. So the feet, the heels and the back are in touch with the wall. And now bending forward, place your elbows very close to the heels. So just about an inch or two away from the heels to maintain the right distance from the wall. Now placing your crown on your head again, lifting the knees and the hips off the ground towards the ceiling. Walk your toes towards yourself and again bringing one leg up and the other leg up, placing your toes on the wall. The knees are still bent and notice how the back is now straight. As a beginner, you tend to take a lot of weight on the head. However, this should not be the case as we go up in the headstand. The majority of our weight should be borne by our forearms. And to train our bodies to do this, bend the knees and take the hips and the knees towards the wall, lifting the head off the mat. And again, pressing the forearms into the mat, push the knees and hips back towards the wall, lift the head off the mat. This forces you to take all the body weight on the forearms, getting an understanding of how the forearms should be active in a Shirshasana or a headstand. Now walking the toes inch by inch down towards the floor halfway, lift one leg off the mat, keeping the forearm strong and lift the other leg up to an Ardha Shirshasana if possible. Now this could take months of practice and I would highly recommend to do this in the presence of a yoga teacher. Now bringing your feet down and coming to the base position of our Shirshasana. And if you're up to it, you could try the same thing again, walking your toes up on the wall and bending the knees and the hips, raising the head and looking at the palms. Resting the head and this time straightening out the legs, dropping the hips back to the wall and transferring the weight on the forearms. Straightening the legs out again, pushing the wall and activating the forearms into the mat, lifting the head up and the hips and knees go back. Now walking the legs down the wall towards the mat, notice how the weight slightly comes off the head as you come to the base position of Shirshasana. Now let me just demonstrate the headstand or the Shirshasana, walking my legs towards myself, lifting both legs off the mat. This is the Ardha Shirshasana. And now straightening my knees to stand erect on my head. This is the Shirshasana. And now bending my knees again to come down onto the mat. And rest in Balasana for a couple of minutes. This can be quite an intense practice if you're trying it out for the first time, and it's very likely that you feel a burn in the arms and your core throughout the day. Taking a few deep breaths in and out, releasing all the stress in the arms, the shoulder blades, and the entire body. Now coming up on our fours for a little warm-up before we try a beginner variation of the handstand or the Adho Mukha Vrikshasana. As the name suggests, the entire weight will be borne by the hands or the wrists on the palms. In order to train our body for the same, let's lift the right leg up as I'm demonstrating and lunge forward, to feel the shift of the weight on your wrists and your palms. And now tuck the left toe in and lift the knees off the mat to feel the entire weight of the body on the arms. Resting back, coming to neutral. Now let's try this by lifting the left leg up, lunging forward to shift the weight on the hands. Tuck the right toe in and lift off the knee. Now experience the entire weight of the body on your hands before you rest both the knees down. Let's get doing this again, this time by raising the leg up higher and lifting the left knee off the ground. The entire weight is on your wrists, on your hands, making it strong, and trying this on the left side. So lift the left leg up and higher, tuck the right toe in, right knee comes off the ground, the entire weight is experienced on the wrist, palms, the arms, and place both the knees down. Resting the hips on the heels and coming down to resting in Balasana. You can relax your arms by interlocking them behind your hips or just placing it beside your ankles. Taking a breather here before we get on to doing our handstand with the wall. Come to sitting in Dandasana with your hips and the back against the wall. And now watch where your feet are placed so that your arms can be placed in the same location. Now briefly coming up on your fours, placing the arms in the same position where your feet were a few seconds ago. I'm just taking time to activate my arms for pressing the wrist and the palms into the mat. And now lifting the knees and the hips off the ground. Now walk up the wall with your toes on the wall, straightening your legs, just as we did in the Shirshasana. But over here, instead of having the elbows and the forearms on the mat, standing on the head, here we're standing on our hands by pressing the wrists and the palms into the mat. A very similar experience to what one would feel in a handstand. Of bending the knees, taking the hips back. You can jump or walk down into the mat. Sitting in Vajrasana and bending over for Balasana or the child pose. You can have your hands beside your ankles, resting your body and resting your mind for a well-deserved break after this supercharged practice of the inversions. And gently coming up to seating whenever you feel like it. Now for some relaxing inversions. Come up to kneeling with your feet together, heels together and the knees together. And let's get doing the Shashankasana or the rabbit pose. For this, we'll bring the chin towards the chest and roll the head into the chest, into the trunk by concaving the back one vertebra at a time. Now placing your hands just beside and in front of the knees, bending the head over, bending the upper body and curving the spine as you place the crown of your head on the mat. Notice that my thighs are perpendicular to the ground. And now I readjust myself, placing my hands lower next to the knees and shifting my head as close to the knees as possible. This is the Shankasana or the rabbit pose. You can extend your hands backward to hold on to your heels, or you could even tuck the toes in, still holding on to the knees for a better sense of balance. Then you can release your hands, release the toes, extend them outward, and interlock the hands again above the hip for a shoulder stretch, trying to lift the arms up and taking it back as much as possible. Again, this depends on the flexibility of your body. This gives a good opening up feeling of the arms and the shoulder joints. This posture is great, especially for those who have frequent headaches or in general for any issues of the nervous system. Bringing the hands back, placing it beside the knees, and resting your forehead on the mat. Extending your arms out again, staying in Balasana for a couple of seconds to avoid any rush of blood by suddenly coming up to seating. Now, in Balasana, you can also spread your knees out a little bit, making space for the abdomen to rest and relax. Now, taking a few deep breaths in, affirm that your entire body is relaxed. And now for the very last asana of the day, and I promise you it's going to be super relaxing. This is the Viparita Karani. Come to sitting sidewards with the hips beside your wall. And now coming to lying down on your back, adjust your hips such that they're touching the wall, lifting the legs up onto the wall and straightening them, making sure that the back of the legs are entirely rested on the wall. If need be, you can adjust yourself to bring the hips closer to the wall such that there is no space between the wall, the base of the hips, and the legs. Rest here, softening your breath and your arms slightly spread out with the palms facing the ceiling. Relax the lower back, the shoulders, the arms, and the legs. Now, since our focus today has been inversions, so to make this a little more inclined, we're going to use a brick and place it below our sacrum or the tailbone. So you could place a vertical brick if you choose a steeper incline. And again, rest your heels against the wall, as so. And spread the arms out slightly besides the hips, palms facing the ceiling. And if this feels too steep for your back, then you can adjust the brick horizontally, or you could simply use two bricks stacked one upon the other and again place it below your tailbone or the sacrum. So this feels like a much more relaxing, comfortable height for me, especially after this strenuous practice. And now, starting with your toes, you can relax the entire body. Relax your calves, your knees, the kneecaps. Relax the entire thighs, the front and the back of the thighs. Relax your entire pelvis region. The lower back and the abdomen is relaxed. Relaxing the shoulder blades. You could choose to spread your feet apart by a couple of inches or a few feet. And relaxing the arms, the head, and the neck. Bend your knees, placing the feet against the wall, raising your hips to remove the bricks and place them aside. Relax your lower back on the mat, hug your knees, and roll over from side to side. Come to lying down on one side and gently come up to sitting. Let's take a moment today to thank the universe for these wonderful yogic teachings and thank our body for supporting us through the practice today.
I hope you enjoyed today's energetic practice of the inversions. Stay happy, stay healthy, and namaste.